GM everyone, and welcome to Smart Contact, an interview series with the world's most important, influential, and impactful Web3 leaders. This podcast is produced by Web3 Harbour and is supported by Circle, our 2024 Smart Contact lead sponsor. Like and subscribe for more Smart Contacts.
Welcome to another episode of Smart Contact, produced by Web3 Harbour and supported by our partners, Circle, our Smart Contact 2024 series sponsor, and DLA, stepping in for Funiverse this month as the host of Web3 Harbour's monthly Cross Harbour Thursday. My name is Minh Do, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Animoca Brands, and I am your host today. We are recording with a live audience, and today's Smart Contact is Aleksander Leonard Larsen, co-founder, chairman, and Chief Operating Officer at Sky Mavis. Thank you, Aleksander, for joining us, and thank you for our audience for joining our conversation today. So, Aleksander, welcome to Hong Kong. It's great to have you join us. Let's really start this from the beginning. Talk to us about how you got started. You were working for the Norwegian state, but you were a professional gamer. Tell us more about that journey.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Great to be back in Hong Kong. It's been, I think, a couple of years now. I was here briefly before COVID. At that time, to raise some funding from Animoca Brands, actually. It's been some time. So yeah, my story, I think I always wanted to create things. I wanted to, but it was not actually about money for me. It was always about community. And I think that, like, when I was a competitive gamer, I always did, like, we hosted community events. We hosted some, not podcasts because there weren't necessarily podcasts even back then. But yeah, just we did some commentaries, I would say. So always trying to build the communities. And it wasn't because there wasn't even any money in gaming at the time. It felt like, particularly for professional gamers, even though I was a professional, I guess you could say, I went to some tournaments, but, even though if we won, it was only enough to maybe get the money back from what we'd spent to travel. So always been a very passionate about what I do. It's never really been about the money. And then it's kind of how I went into crypto as well. It wasn't actually about the money. I felt that people deserve to own their own data because I was tired of the platforms such as Facebook, and it felt natural to me that crypto could be used for that. And then just happened to connect with my interest in gaming, wanted to work in the gaming industry, and from there went on to build this company.
Great. Before we get into Sky Mavis, did you ever have an experience like Vitalik with his Warlock, his famous Warlock, where you lost an account or anything like that?
So I was always collecting things inside games, and I remember even before Warcraft and Dota, played a lot of Diablo 2, but it was never in the same level, I would say, as Vitalik, where I got banned. For me, I remember trading Stones of Jordans, which was the game currency, I guess, in Diablo 2. And being a part of some random forums where you could buy and sell forum gold. So there's always been this area where you could actually farm inside games to make money. It was just not really available for anyone because you were doing it kind of on the black market. But yeah, not exactly the same as Vitalik, but I feel like game economies are here to stay.
Absolutely. And tell us, why was Dota your game? And why did you never move to League? And then do you miss real-time strategy games like Warcraft? They seem to have gone out of fashion a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. For me, actually, the Dota is also a community thing. It came out of Warcraft 3. It was a custom map. It was made, actually, I originally, maybe from StarCraft even, was a custom map there. And then it was remade in Warcraft 3. And I was always very connected to the community there. And I felt like, it's just a different way of playing games, I guess. And I really love the real-time strategy aspect of it. I haven't played that much Warcraft 3 or Dota in the past couple of years, but what I have played a little bit of is actually Age of Empires 4. But the funny part is, when I look back at whenever I have time to play, it's usually when there are dull moments in the space, I would say. So when there is a bear market, I don't get so much energy from spending all of my time on, I would say, mundane administrative tasks at work. So I like to win. I have the competitive drive. And if I can win in business, I really don't have to play any games. But if I can't win in business, that means that you have to do the grinding, right? You have to grind through a bear market. It's really hard to win because you keep shipping features. You keep doing all the stuff with the employees. You have a lot of boring things, so to say, that's involved in building a company. So you can't win in the same way. That's when I play games. So I actually randomly, I think, got into like some top 100 or top 1,000, I guess, in Age of Empires 4 as well. So it's kind of my competitive drive is definitely there. I just don't always have the time. And right now I don't have the time to play anything. So that's usually a sign of where we are in the market, that you really just have to stay focused and make hay when the sun is shining, I should say.
Absolutely. Right now is definitely the make hay moment in the space. But let's bring us back to the origin story of Axie Infinity and Sky Mavis. Sky Mavis is seen, I guess, globally as a Vietnamese headquartered company. Actually, as people can maybe tell from my name, I'm actually half Vietnamese. So, to get a global leader out of Vietnam makes me personally very proud. How did you and Jiho get involved with Trung, and how did you end up starting a company building Web3 games with a Vietnamese founder?
Yeah, so it's funny. It started, we've been building now for a little bit over 6 years. Started out with CryptoKitties. At the time, I actually dislocated my shoulder at work and I had time off work. So suddenly I found myself being able to play a lot of CryptoKitties. So I think I put in like $200 in CryptoKitties and at the end of the day, I ended up with 100,000 or something like that trading cats.
Wow.
And during that time, I got to know some other guys that were there that was really passionate as me. And that was actually Trung and Jeff, who ended up being my co-founders at Axie. And then I actually was working for another Norwegian startup that was building in the blockchain gaming space as well. But what happened there is they weren't actually builders in the same way. I felt like they didn't see the industry in the same way that I did. So I remember asking Trung to build something for that company. So I was actually hired Trung, who's the CEO and the architect of Axie and Sky Mavis, to build us a marketplace, an NFT marketplace for the other company. And he did in 2 weeks. And then I was like, wait, why am I actually working with these other guys when I could actually work with the person who is a real builder, who wanted me to work with him, who wanted me to move to Vietnam? So then I decided, I'm just going to quit my Norwegian job. And then I moved to Vietnam. Never been there before. Came there, came kind of out of a startup story, because I met Trung in the airport, and he's like this. He's not autistic, but he's definitely a little bit not so sociable and as many others. He's an incredibly strong engineer. And then I met him, and he took me to like the hotel. It was a 2-star hotel. It cost $20 a night in Vietnam. It's terrible. But I remember like going out of the shower, and he was on the bed there coding. I was like, this is probably a guy that I want to work with. He has the same competitive drive as me, and it was not about anything else. It was just like, okay, we're going to build this company. And it was never meant to be something as grand as, Sky Mavis and Ronan is today. We just built one step at a time and really started finding product market fit within our community. And from there, Axie got merged into Sky Mavis, which then also made Ronan Network. And now it's a whole bunch of suites. We have our own wallets. We have our own marketplaces, infrastructure, 250 employees. Things take time to build, but I think, if you just stick with it, and of course, you have some demand for the product and good people to work with, then magic stuff can happen, I guess.
Talk to us a little bit more about that journey. So you told me earlier that you've been with your now wife for 10 years.
Yeah.
When you told her you're going to get on a plane and go to Vietnam to meet an engineer, how did that go down? And then you moved to Vietnam after that.
Yeah, so I think it's, me and my wife, we always had very transparent communication about things. And frankly, I was underperforming in my life otherwise than Web3.
We're definitely now overperforming.
Yeah, now probably on a different scale. But I was probably underperforming. And I remember she's rock geologist. And she worked at one of the top companies in Norway and geology. And she was doing all of this fancy stuff at work. And I was like, yeah, this sounds like fun. Probably I should be doing something like you're doing. And she was like, yeah, you would probably love it. And then I was like, am I going to go back to school? Am I going to do something else? Am I going to fund my own company? And then it found this opportunity. And I just said, the worst thing that can happen here is even if Sky Mavis and, we don't make it, at least I would have learned a lot. So I came at it like a very, first of all, we had never raised any money, didn't know a single investor, didn't know anything about building a company, didn't know anything about anything, basically, just moved there. And I felt like I have so much to learn and I have so much time to spend and I have maybe a lot of talent. I felt like, as I said, I was underperforming. So I want to learn. And it was very aggressive in that sense. So yeah, that's why I did it. And we felt like, oh, we're going to give it a chance. So first of all, it was just supposed to be a couple of months in Vietnam just to try it out. Traveled home back and then stayed there a little while. And yeah, then back to Vietnam to kind of build a company. And it was very funny when at the start, because nobody believed in Web3, nobody believed in anything that we were trying to do. We maybe had like 1,000 people in our community. And then, the market started crashing in 2018. The end of the day, maybe at the end of 2018, we had 1 month to live and 200 people left in the community or something like that. So it was really brutal. We cut all salaries, cut everything, and then suddenly managed to raise some money from Animoca Brands. It was amazing. And then from there, it's just been a continuous way up until we got hacked. And then things start. Like, building a startup is incredibly difficult because you never know really what's around the next corner, right? So you need to be incredibly resilient. And I think like Sky Mavis really encompasses that because we came in with very low expectations, right? We didn't have all these expectations that we're going to build this massive company. But when there was an opportunity, I feel like we really grasped it and did everything we could to grow into something else. And I think that's a part of what this industry allows people to do, because I see Web3 as being an equalizer. If you're early, if you have passion, if you have talent, you can find your place and build something that people need. Because in normal companies, I would say, they have the traditional careers, they have everything that, they don't need to take the risk. I feel like the risk opportunity reward in Web3 is, it's very outsized. It's a massive opportunity for everyone in this room. I consider ourselves being incredibly early. And you guys can really have a big impact because other people won't give it a chance. They look down on us. And I think that was really, it's just an incredible opportunity.
Absolutely. Talk to us a bit about the origination of the Axie idea. How did you guys come up with the idea of doing this, 3 PvP game? What was the concept? Talk to us a bit about that.
Yeah, so actually the Axie idea originally came from Trong and Masamune, who are both Vietnamese nationals, and they wanted to make this IP which is these cute blob characters, a little bit inspired by Pokemon, that you can breed and create new ones, and then eventually kind of build an IP out of that. And then we came in, me and Jeff, we kind of put some more structure into it. And then we became co-founders of the company. So I think Masamune, or Tu as he's called, is the artist. He's been the creative brain behind it. He was always very passionate about creating things. So, and always very inspired by Japan. So when you look at a lot of Sky Mavis history, Ronin, for example, the blockchain is inspired by Japan. There's a lot of different things inside the Axie lore, which is also inspired by Japan. So I guess that's kind of where a little bit of the inspiration comes from for the IP.
And just for the history buffs, how did Jeff come into the picture? So he was part of the CryptoKitties crew?
Yeah, that's right. So I remember Trong was asking me, we need to hire someone from the community to be like the community leader, because I was more on the business side. And then I remember seeing Jeff, and he had I feel like he had ADHD, because always in the community, he was always chatting. He was very active. For those of you who don't know him, he's active on Twitter. His name is Jihos. And then I was like, this guy has to be a good fit for this specific role that you're looking for. And he was like, yeah, I've talked to him. And then I recommended him. And after that, he joined. And then I remember meeting him face to face in Vietnam. It was great. We lived together. And, we were roommates, I guess. For the first 2 years, it was very intense. But, consider him one of my best friends. He was at my wedding as well. So I think we've been very lucky at Sky Mavis, having a good founder team that you can trust, even when you make it or when things are tough. Like when we got hacked, or when you don't have any more money left, like what happens? How do you solve those problems, right? You really find out who are the people that you can trust in the industry and in your companies, because they're very focused on solving problems one step at a time, rather than focusing on the personal issues that might quickly arise if you're not careful. So I feel like very lucky to have met these guys and to still be building with them. So yeah.
Awesome. And yeah, we'll definitely get into some of those ups and downs. I guess for those who are listening, who are new this cycle, there probably isn't that many yet. I think most of the people DJing into meme coins right now, they're probably from previous cycles, and so they know what's going on. But for those listeners of this podcast in the future, walk us back a little bit to the spectacular rise of Axie in 2021. So, I mean, these numbers are a little bit all over the place, but according to CryptoSlam, in January 2021, you guys made a little less than $1 million in revenues, which maybe was already a lot to you guys back then, because probably prior to that, you had very, very little revenues. And then in July that year, you generated $697 million in revenues. Now, other sources say it was more like closer to 200 million, 196. But regardless, that's an insane growth trajectory. Talk to us a bit about what that period was like.
Sure. I think from an Axie revenue perspective, Axie has generated about $1.3 billion in revenue since inception. The NFT collection has been traded about $4.2 billion of value transacted. So it's the most traded NFT collection of all time, higher than Bored Apes and all these other, but maybe less known, I would say, because the traders and more retail type rather than the crypto Twitter side of things. So I think what we did was genius in some ways. We found a new way to tap into both investors and players, and we enabled people to actually make money playing the game. And we created the 2-token model, which was great to see work, but also interesting to see what happens when it really takes off too much. So coming from the inside, trying to scale this company, because we were 20 people when we started finding product market fit. And as you said, like going from that 1 million to 200 or so, what it ended up being, I don't, it's been a while since I looked at the numbers because it's not relevant right now. I think it's a unique situation, right? Because everything is growing so fast, the servers are breaking, the community is demanding. You can't educate people fast enough about the industry, about anything really, because everyone is trying to make so much money that they can, and people start coming in. So it was a unique experience, and it gives us a good idea of what not to do and what to keep doing when we were advising different teams that want to work with us. And it's just it's really hard to describe unless you're on the inside of it, because things go so fast, and it's a period of time where you just have to keep working 24/7. I think to describe product market fit to people who have never done it, it's like at one point you're trying to shove the ball or a big stone up a mountain, right? It's really difficult. Sometimes it's almost impossible because it's vertical. When you're having product market fits, like you're running down the mountain and the stone is chasing you, everything feels like it's going your way, but at the same time it's not, because there's a lot of demands from everyone. So I think the interesting thing about crypto is it's very seasonal. Sometimes for everyone it feels like you have product market fit, but in reality you probably don't, because that's just what happens when a lot of people come into the space.
So when you had the 2-token model and then people started farming SLP, and then you had this massive rise in the Philippines, how did that come about? Was there a catalyst to drive that particular community, or what happened?
Yeah, so what we started seeing is, we were tracking the data. We're trying to find out are people abusing the data? Are they trying to over farm like our system? So we had like geological data. We started seeing certain areas in the Philippines where hubs where people were playing a lot. So we actually, I remember, we banned them from the game because we thought they were bots. And then a couple of days after, some people were sending in like pictures of them and their families playing Axie and just like, please unban us. We're real people. We're not bots. There's like this entire village that was so-called Cabanatuan City where they were playing so much. Like literally everyone there was playing. And then we unbanned them, and I think YGG, which is a guild in the crypto ecosystem, they actually sent like a team down there to do a documentary about it. And they found out that in that one city or in that one area, almost everyone was playing. The people, they were accepting SLP for payments for food in the shops. And it became like this big thing, a big documentary. And it was like, actually, it showcases what's possible when you look at Web3 and Web3 gaming being the gateway to economic freedom, right? So people, or economic freedom. So people, they start playing the games and they discover Web3 and they see all the benefit that it's enabled, right? For some people, that's like, oh, Web3 is a Ponzi scheme. It's a scam. For other people, it means economic freedom, right? You can actually trade, you can transact with whoever you want. There's no government involved there. It's you are your self-sovereign in terms of you're owning your money. For others, it means identity, right? For me, it means owning your data. It means NFTs. So all of these things are connected. It's two sides of the same coin. And I think that in that area of the Philippines, it was all about money, right? But afterwards, it started becoming more about payments and what can they do with these NFTs and the digital pets that they have. It was very unique to see all these things happen in real time. And I would say that rather than being a conscious strategy, it was more like we were leaning into not banning them, because we very easily could have, because it felt like it was unsustainable in some ways, but it was still very interesting to follow.
And just because you mentioned, and again, on a tangent, YGG, did that team come about because of Axie, or were they already doing something and then somehow Axie just became their main thing?
Yeah, so YGG, made by Gabby Dyson, I know him really well. I'm actually a disclosure here, I'm an advisor and seed investor in YGG. Gabby actually made his own game studio first. He was a game entrepreneur. And then he started seeing, I think, the traction in Axie, and he started seeing that some people had already made some small guilds. They were they were hiring other players, and then he wanted to, I think, institutionalize it and see how can you actually do this in a bigger way. So he made YGG, and then Merit Circle came after, and I think Axie really put so many different business models in the air, or in the minds of the people, I would say, but it was too early. So Axie, I think, really showed what's possible when this industry is kind of at its peak. Right? You will see digital nations. You will see people living inside these games, playing for money, playing for, and actually making a living, right? That is you could call it Ready Player One, the game universe there, people live there. And that's going to happen in Web3 gaming as well. People thought that was Axie 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It was way too early for that, because the depth of the game was not there to support all of the builders, all the people that wanted it. And I think that's a little bit on us too, but also it's hard to live up to the expectation of the player, because there's a delta between how far you can push it from a project perspective, how much can you develop in a shorter period of time, versus the expectation of the player, because they see Axie and they see a digital nation, something that's emerging, something that can be massive. From our side, we see a game that's going to grow into that over 10 years. But that expectation is particularly in crypto, because there's so much liquidity, money, it becomes massive, right? So that's why the economy became so big.
Sorry to interrupt the video, but I want to tell you about our 2024 Smart Contact lead sponsor, Circle.
What is Circle?
At Circle, we're building a digital dollar that brings the power of the internet to money.
Circle's the place where crypto meets stability,
where local businesses meet global customers,
and the US dollar meets USDC.
Meet Circle.
Thank you to all of our sponsors and community partners. Now back to the conversation.
And talking about the economy, what happened, as SLP and AXS were just riding high? Mm-hmm. I mean, you must have been waking up every day and thinking, how is the price keep going up? Mm-hmm. What was going through your head, and what was going through your team head? How were you managing your team on the ground in Vietnam? These guys probably have some kind of exposure to AXS. What was going on there?
And as I said, I think it's been less about the money for us, even though when the price was going crazy, we had big allocations. It was interesting to see, but it's more interesting to see is to feel successful and to feel like a lot of people rely on your product and rely on your, they rely on what you're doing, right? So I feel like we didn't even have time to enjoy it before it was almost started crashing. So, and the good thing is we had actually seen part of that happen in CryptoKitties. So you see the economy really taking off and you're like, oh, how long can this last? And then it started crashing, and then there are different things that you can do to keep it lasting, right? How much of a product are you ready? Can you ship the next feature? Can you do all these other things to make these economies last longer? And that's why I'm saying a digital nation, which is solid enough to support all the highs and lows. So you don't get the extreme lows that you got in Axie, but you maybe don't also see the extreme highs. That's probably best, so you can have a sustainable path upwards. But unfortunately, we didn't have that. So that's why it crashed quite hard. But it was also in tandem with the general crypto market, because people start to lose faith in general. And so they want to pull their money out, right? And I think when I compare it to, let's say, a city, it's a little bit similar. Because when you look at the real estate market in the city, the prices there are very dependent on people actually trusting that they can have something sustainable, like the value is being kept there. But if the prices start going down, everyone is going to want to sell, right? So it becomes a very negative spiral. And the same goes on the flip side. It's reflexive. So when it starts growing, it really becomes crazy. So you see all of these boom and bust cycles, particularly in emerging nations, where people are speculating on the success of that nation in the short term, but maybe it's not sustainable because more stuff needs to be developed for the long term.
Yeah, I love that concept of digital nation and I completely agree with you. Crypto is so highly reflexive, and of course, because there's also inbuilt leverage into crypto, so the reflexivity is even greater. But the analogy is very apt, right? You're basically saying, hey, as there's interest in the digital nation, people invest and the prices keep going up. But then as the sentiment turns, it's like not only is the economy getting weaker, but also the sentiment in everyone is getting weaker as well. And so they rapidly pull their money out and everything kind of spirals down.
Yeah, it's not only actually about the money, but it's also about the players, right? And I think this is so my thesis here is that as Web3 games, Web3 native games, and I think Pixels is also doing this as well, we have to lean into the seasonal nature or the cyclical nature of crypto. And you actually need to say that, all right, when people come into the systems, when there is a lot of attention, this is a feature. This is not a bug. This is how it's supposed to be. And then you can start growing really, really fast for a period of time. And then you're going to create a higher low. And what I mean by that is that the players that come into the system, they maybe come for money. They come to speculate. And then they stick around for everything else that's on the other side of the coin, right? The digital ownership of it, the financial freedom that they actually get from participating in a crypto ecosystem. And I think that's fine. Some people will buy the top. We have to accept that being in crypto. And we have to be able to say that out loud without that necessarily being a bad thing, because until we get to the end state here where every single person in the world is onboarded to Web3, that is just how it's going to be, because it's still an emerging side. It's an emerging technology. So we cannot say that we are at a sustainable state, because if we were, then we wouldn't see the massive highs. We wouldn't see the lower or the higher lows. Like, it's still going to feel very painful. But when does the cycle end? Like, when are we at the final state? To me, that's when every single person is onboarded to crypto. And right now, maybe we have like 150, 200 million, something like that. Several billion people in the world. There's a lot of room to grow here. And that means that just sticking it out over the cycles and making sure that when the new cycle begins, we have new products, we have new designs, economic designs, which can attract a different set of people, and that we can grow ourselves, hopefully, out of this cyclical nature that we're in. But I believe it's going to take time.
I totally agree with you. I guess, we definitely see this with Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? So every time next cycle, Bitcoin has higher lows, and Ethereum the same. In fact, Bitcoin basically breached the all-time high, and everyone's kind of like, it's not a big deal, actually. So that's...
I've seen more people as well.
For sure.
Like, the communities are growing. I'm not sure how many people in the audience here have been in this industry for 6 years, but I would assume maybe not that many, maybe a few. But the economies are going to keep growing. The people that are coming in are going to keep sticking around, because they understand that crypto is about more than just money. That might have been the original attraction, but if that was the only thing that was here, you wouldn't have like women in Web3 in Hong Kong, and you wouldn't have all these other great things that comes from the communities, because they believe in more than just money, right? It has to be.
Let's definitely put a pin in that and come back to that, because I think we can have a lot of philosophical conversation about what it's going to mean to be a digital nation in the future. I think we should explore that a bit. But just bring us back on a chronological order. So right after this boom, we're heading into 2022, and you had the Ronin hack, and this is just before Luna collapsed at the end of March 2022. I remember someone told me that you were on stage just as the hack was announced. Tell us about that day, and how did you and your team fight to rebuild the credibility of Sky Mavis and the project?
Yeah, so actually it wasn't me who was on stage. It was Jeff Ojiho, who was actually at a meetup in the US doing something. I had just traveled back from GDC. It's funny. I remember, I got some message from a community member. Oh, there might be some problem here. I sent it to our CTO. Went to bed. I didn't feel great. And I woke up like 4 hours later. It's like this message, you have to come. There's a big problem. I just went downstairs in my, t-shirt, boxer shorts, try to get on the computer. It's like, we've been hacked. The loss is $600 million. Like, holy shit. Okay, what happens now? It's really everything that we've been working for the past, 3.5 years. Everything was gone. And then we started thinking, like, is there a chance to recover from this? Is everything we worked for lost? And it was like a moment of panic, but also a moment of like, okay, well, we came from nothing. How can we actually start to recover from this? And the worst part was, they had stolen, it was North Korea, we didn't know at the time, but they had stolen the money from all the users. Like they took the money from the bridge. So an analogy I use there is like what actually happened is that they forged the signature and they basically went to the bridge and said, hey, can you give all the money you have? And the bridge was like, okay, this looks good. Take all the money, and off it went. It's an incredibly stressful situation. I'm proud of how the team handled it. So the first thing, you set the war room. You try to determine what is the natural path forward. Is there any way that we can get some of the money back? Probably not. Denial. What's the next path forward to solve the problem? And then try to walk through the path there. And I think trying to, as you said, regain the credibility and compensate the player base was probably the most important thing, right? We needed to make sure that people were able to trust us because we'd built a lot of trust over the years. So it was less about us, but more about the community. How can we save the community's money somehow? So we actually needed to find a way to either raise money. We took our own balance sheet money, took any money that we can find, and we basically put it back into the bridge so the users would get their stuff first. And I think that was such a massive, important part of it, that we were able to come to that conclusion over, I think, 5-6 days. We were able to say that, guys, we're actually going to be able to refund you. It's going to take some time. We have a plan. We have some backers here and there, Binance, Animoca, a lot of our existing investors also agreed to assist and committed to the round. So we got that out of the way, which was incredibly important, but a very brutal time for sure. So I didn't sleep so much. My role there, more kind of a battle captain, trying to make sure that we had a strategy lined up. We all have our roles to play, right? And I think that's one of the moments that are most hardest moments of my life, but probably also one of the moments that I look back on and I'm very proud that we managed to handle it and nobody, freaked out or really had any panic. It's hard because I was just alone in my basement in Norway with my wife, was kind of in the other rooms. We're trying to figure it out, like what's happening here. And we had the other guys in Vietnam, and we had some other people, like Jeff was in the US alone, and the team is distributed. So how do you communicate to the stakeholders is your team, to the community, to the shareholders? It's a challenging time, but I think we did okay.
You guys did amazing. And then you found out later it was North Korea. Which is pretty public knowledge by this time. But how does it feel to be to take on a state nation?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of learnings here for other crypto companies. And as I said, like when things start really when you find product market fit in crypto, it feels like it's going 100 miles per hour, 1,000 miles per hour. There's so much money, so much liquidity that sometimes you don't even have a chance to accurately look at the risk versus reward of how much secure should you be versus, how aggressive can you be, right? So as an entrepreneur, you always have to, there's a trade-off in everything you do. In this case, I wish we would have been more focused on security. Obviously, when we started seeing the amounts of money that came into the system, I think at one point, there was already $1 billion in FTV or in TVL on Ronin, just a couple of days after we launched. Like people were aping like crazy. FTX among other people, of course, randomly. And then we found out it was in North Korea. Yeah, I mean, it's like, what can you do? We were talking to the FBI. It's like really just said, hopefully, we're probably not going to get that much money back. But there's some that's coming back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Didn't know
so
that.
some has been frozen. Some is going to be refunded into us, and we're going to put it back. I'm going to make an announcement of whenever that happens, when more of the money comes back. So, yeah, I mean, what it just means is that we can't, it's out of our control. So I think as an entrepreneur, you have to think in the way that what can we solve? What's in our control? And we have to work the best of it because everything else is just noise for us at the moment. So if it was North Korea, something else, doesn't really matter that much. You feel kind of unsafe though, I would say. You feel like the security that you had is kind of taken away, and then you have to start rebuilding it.
Absolutely. And this was one of the moments where Trung, as you said, he's usually behind the scenes, but he really came to the forefront and kind of communicate with the community. So your whole team really banded together.
Yeah, I think everyone had to do so. I think I had a video, super tired, trying to like, okay, guys, we're going to come out with some news. And Trung also had some tweets here and there, and Jeff was on stage. And I think from a crypto project perspective, the importance of leadership, I think, is very... People, I think, have to understand that. Like, you can't have a crypto project without being the de facto, not cult leader, but the person who's there in the front lines, talking to the community, being that person who's like, okay, this is what we're doing. You say something and you do it, right? Because every time you say something, you don't do it, credibility is taken away, you lose it. We are the victim of that ourselves as well. We try to be very true to what we like to say, to do what we're saying. Sometimes executing is really difficult, right? Even though Sky Mavis is probably one of the better companies, it's really easy to make a promise, but executing, doing all the things you say, that's the hard part, right? And I think that's going to be a rude awakening for many projects in the space.
Absolutely. And we, at Animoca, we talk about this a lot, is really finding that founder team who can really play that role, because the amount of scrutiny, pressure, FUD, community, getting at you, one moment they're really for you and one moment they're against you. We really look to find that type of founder that we can feel like, okay, this founder has built resilience in their past kind of history. So really, really important. So let's talk about the company a little bit. So obviously Axie continues to thrive and continues to do well, and you've released as a team kind of more games. You had Axie Origins, and then now you've recently released Axie Champions. But it does seem the company overall has shifted a lot of its focus to the Ronin chain. Tell us a bit about your strategy for Sky Mavis. Like, you have these two core products, your game business and now the chain business. How do you break it down? How do you think about it?
Sure. So reference here, Sky Mavis, we're 250 people right now. I would say about 50% of them, mostly engineers working on Ronin. We have our own core team there, 50% on the game side. A lot of artists, actually, building Axie art specifically. So what I would say is Axie is always going to be a priority for Sky Mavis. Where Nintendo has Mario, Sky Mavis will have Axie. I see it as a core foundational of what we're building, but we also have to show the world that Sky Mavis is more than just Axie. So Ronin, in essence, is a permission chain for now. It was built as a tool so that Axie could go to market. And then eventually the idea was that we would open it up for others so that they could use the same tools and services and everything else that we built so that Axie would succeed. So what we found is that when we were trying to work with other partners, they were saying to us that we know how to solve your problem. They were saying to us that everything you guys do, we can probably do it better, but in reality, nobody had solved the gaming problem in the same way that we had. So why would we trust them? We actually ended up, first of all, we deployed a part of our infrastructure on a blockchain called Loom Network, ended up, they pivoted into healthcare. And this is like so absurd because as a crypto project, you have to trust the chain so much that they have your back. And it turned out that they didn't. And we had done so much research, but at the end of the day, if there is no traction on a chain, they're just going to do something else. So you really have to make sure that the partner you're choosing, they really understand your business particularly well. So that was the thesis from the beginning. We are going to understand gaming better than anyone else. And it's going to be the gateway into crypto for the partners and the teams that we work with. And they're going to be able to use all the tools that we make, right? So why would they want to work with us, right? We really understand what it's required to succeed from a game perspective, right? Web3 gaming is inherently very, very different from Web2 gaming. The part of what you need in terms of resilience from a founder, in terms of live operations, in terms of tokenomics, in terms of exchange communication, in terms of shareholder communication, in terms of communication with the community, it's vastly different. So how can you expect the people that have never built it to actually know anything of what they're talking about? Right, so that was the thesis for everything that we built. And for the few partners that we work with, such as Pixels, right, which is seeing amazing success right now, we try to really advise them on what they should do, but also what they shouldn't do. Because we have a lot of experience with those particular topics, right? We know, but there is no clear answer to everything because it's still a story that's being written. Web 2, in a sense, is very clear for many what the recipe to success is. In Web3, gaming in particular, I think everyone is trying to feel our way out. How do we succeed? But a lot of it is first principle thinking. And that comes down to the founder and the people that are building these products. And hopefully, by working with the right people, they can avoid making the same mistakes. So that's kind of what we started building. And Ronin is now, I think from a growth perspective, it's the third most used blockchain in the world. It's got 1.2 million daily active people. And the funny part is I was looking at some CoinGecko research. Almost nobody knows in the crypto space, it feels like. Ronin is not even in the top 20 most searched coins on CoinGecko for all ecosystems, which is hilarious to me when you look at the traction, right? So I think that there's a significant amount of room to grow and a lot of work for us to do as well. because we're very like double down on gaming. And I think that is really the key here. How do we make sure that the customers around the world, first of all, that are buying the tokens, but also that are playing the games, are more than just extractors, or that they are real gamers, I would say. And I think that's what we're working on right now.
And how do you categorize that? How do you think about the metrics in relation to who's a speculator, who's an investor, who's a real gamer? Like, how do you think about that map?
Yeah, so it's funny, right? I think for what we did right with Axie, we actually created an opportunity for the passive investor, or for the person who wants to be an owner, or be a guild, for example, to partake in the ecosystem by breeding new Axies. And I think in Pixels, they're landowners. They might employ other people there through guilds. There are ways you need to tap into all these various groups of people and give them a job in your game, I would say, or in the digital nation that you're building. So I would say that we did something right there. There's a lot to learn still and a lot to figure out.
So let's talk about Pixels. Right now, it's the number one game in Web3. It's obviously a monster. Animoca Brands is, of course, proud to be an investor and supporter of them as well. First of all, what made you guys decide that Luke and Pixels are really a horse to get behind? I mean, they were on a different chain previously. Mm-hmm. And then we've never seen Sky Mavis rally its community around a game like you guys did with Pixels. And obviously, it's been very successful. So, it's not that long since Pixels moved to Ronin. I think it was like October last year. So, what happened there?
Yeah, so some disclosure here. I'm also a seed investor in Pixels, so obviously long there, very bullish on Luke and the team. But yeah, I mean, so when we talk to teams, we make investments, we give them grants, we work closer with the teams, and a lot of it is about the founders and trying to see how do they view the space. And what we liked with Pixels, and they have a very iterative approach to building the game. And here is a contrarian take when it comes to building games, as I think particularly East versus West, right? In the West, I think there's a lot of gamers that love high fidelity games like AAA, Call of Duty, those kind of things. And it's been a take in Web3 that, we're just going to build those type of games because we're going to cater to the Web2 gamer of the world, and we're going to smack on some Web3 stuff. Maybe we do some NFTs, and we do some maybe like a fungible token. And our belief has always been that that is not a good theory to have, because you are not giving, first of all, the more expensive the game is to make, the higher the risk is to go to market with it. And that means that it's like a Hollywood movie. If the Hollywood movie is created, cost $300 million, the stakes are high. You need to succeed, right? So where are you going to take risks, right? Probably not going to take that many risks. So that's why you see many Hollywood movies kind of being quite similar, right? Because they're meant to hit as many people as possible. So when it comes to Web3, because we don't have the recipe, it's natural for those games to say that, we're going to make a fun game, but the Web3 stuff is going to be kind of watered down because they don't know what they don't know, right? They don't know about the economy. They can't risk as much because they can't innovate, because they're afraid if the economy fails, the game is going to crash and everything that we invested is dead. So that's why we believe in investing and working with games that are able to iterate fast, right? So probably they're lower in fidelity in terms of graphics, but they can ship many features fast. They can iterate on the token economy and on the community side, right? They can do some social stuff there, but it's less about the graphics, but more about everything that's surrounding that ecosystem. And I think that's what we really liked with Luke, because they think that way about Pixels. Right now, Pixels has 760,000 daily active players. I think it can go to 10 million this cycle. Why? Axie had 2.6 million daily active players at the peak. Pixels is a different type of game. It's more social in a sense. It's easier to play. You don't need any Axie NFTs, and you can still play it like in your browser, on your phone, even through the wallet, and it's free. Right? You can buy some land. You can do. I think it's just getting started there. So I'm obviously very, very bullish on Pixels, but a lot of it is about the way that they look at Web3 live ops. Right? How much are they experimenting? Right? So they shipped a feature now. It's called Guilds. And the community was mad. This is a disaster. Everyone is mad. All right, fine. They're taking it back, cooking something new up in 2 weeks. That's what you need. That level of iterative approaches is like something you can do in Web2 startups, but we need more of that in Web3. More risk-taking, I think, and less like fear that this is going to crash, because if there is no risk in terms of that, you're just going to ship something that nobody cares about. You're going to ship a watered-down version of a useless product with some tokens slapped on it. and nobody's going to be particularly happy at it, and you're not going to change the world. So I would say that, the asymmetrical opportunity here for game developers is to really double down on Web3, be more aggressive, and learn a lot. Because maybe the first thing that they do is not going to be a success, but maybe the next one is. And the best part is, they've learned a lot in terms of shipping, in terms of being in the market is really the key. And that's also what we felt with Axie. The longer you are in the market, doing something, participating, learning, it's an ocean of difference between actually just thinking that you're going to do something. And I think here's a lot of armchair quarterbacks about, why didn't Axie just do that? Why didn't, Sky Mavis just do this? Or why does that team do that? They don't get it because they haven't actually done anything. And I think it's so funny from a startup perspective because it really easily separates the people who are the doers, who are action-oriented, versus those people who are the armchair quarterbacks, the critics. They like to say the critics, the loudest critics in the room, they can't build anything. They're just critics. And, to me, it's actually pathetic. So, but I'm very outspoken because I feel like Axie got a lot of unwanted or a lot of critics, loved, being very mad at Axie. I think it's okay because when you change something, you do something unique, everyone is going to feel like, this is some lucky thing and I think for Sky Mavis, now we've kind of proven it. No, this is actually not luck. This has to be some part of why is Pixel succeeding on Ronin when they were on Polygon, they didn't succeed. The only difference is the Sky Mavis and Axie community and working with us. So I'm very confident in our approach, but that does not mean that every team is going to make it on Ronin. It means that the best teams that are fit with our community, that are doing things right, they're going to make it, and they're going to make it better than anyone else in any other chain. And why do I think so? Because we actually have players, but the other people, the other chains, they might have speculators, investors, but these are people that look at the games and they judge them based on the graphics or whatever. This is not a game that I would play. They are not the customer. The customer is someone else in an emerging nation, in Asia, in Southeast Asia, in the Philippines, in Cabanatuan City, who actually wants to play these games, who is onboarded into Web3, and that's the beginning of their journey. And they're going to create significant amounts of lifetime value for Sky Mavis and our products moving forward, but also for the games that we partner with.
That's a really good segue into where I wanted to go next. So let's talk more about Ronin's strategy, because last week you sent out a pretty spicy tweet and you had removed a couple of games from the chain. Mm-hmm. That's a really rare thing to see in Web3, right? Usually chains don't discriminate on who builds on them, right? That's kind of the whole point. And obviously, Yatsil, who you know very well, chairman of Animoca Brands, he couldn't be here today, but he's really an advocate of the open and permissionless strategy. So, maybe you can't talk about specifics, or maybe you can, but, tell us about, what happened there.
I think it's more of an approach to building, I would say. Let's start there first, right? Because Ronin was always permissions for Axie's sake, because we knew that block space is limited as a resource. So that we said that if Axie is going to reach 10 million daily active players, we can't actually share block space with so many others immediately, because we are realistic about what works and what doesn't. And when I say that, I mean we actually intimately know the demands for every user. How much block space do they need on average? Other people, other chains might say, anyone can come. Everyone should come and build. This is infinitely scalable. We just saw Solana crash on some kind of meme coin mania. This is not working fully, right? So you have to be pragmatic about it. And I would say that that's kind of one of the things that we did great with Ronin, is that was permissionless, and it's going to be permissionless moving forward as we scale it. But it has to come from a point of actually this stuff actually scales in a real way, and it's not something, some announcement. No. We like battle tested tech that actually works today, and that is also when it comes to the game teams that we're working with. They have to be very, very aligned with us. So when we make an announcement, this game is now coming to Ronin, it's because we have a great relationship with the team. We think that they're doing things in the right way. And when things happen, when maybe there is some miscommunication, or there is a change in leadership or strategic reasons for maybe they're not that committed into Web3 as they originally said, that is also going to impact our decision for how much support we want to give them. And in this case, it was actually in the sense that we were concerned on behalf of our community that the games maybe that we had to remove would not act in their best interest. So we actually ended up taking a loss from a company perspective, but we also did it to protect the community. Now, that's not something that's normally going to happen because we do a lot of vesting or a lot of like research into the teams we work with, but we really try to be careful for now. But eventually, on Ronin, there's also going to be rugs. People are going to get scammed. I'm not afraid of saying these things because this is some real talk. People have to be prepared because that is what comes when you're self-custodying your money. People are mean sometimes on the street as well. Like if you throw your wallet into the ocean, like who are you going to blame? Like that's yourself. Like sure, it's an oversimplification, but that is crypto right now. People have to be prepared for this stuff.
You guys are obviously battle tested.
I mean,
by Kim Jong-un.
yeah, I mean, hopefully that's kind of the belief that we have right now. People would want to work with us because we are very, we don't say things that we don't do. And I think that's like the superpower that Sky Mavis had. We said we were going to refund all the users, and we did. Where did we get the money? We took it from our own pocket, right? To make sure that they would be whole before we would be.
So, what do you want to communicate to other games that want to come and build on Ronin in the near future? What should they think about when they approach you guys? What do they need to keep a good partnership with Ronin?
So I want to make it clear, right? Ronin is the infrastructure, right? And Sky Mavis is the kind of the game publisher in that sense. So you would partner with Sky Mavis, and we would give the communicate to the Ronin team. They would give you guys a grant potentially. So there's like some gating there from a publishing perspective. So what I would say is to the game teams, I think I just described it when I described Pixels, right? We're looking for game teams that are founder-led and dedicated to their building out like an IP that can last for decades and can go through hard times and at least have hopefully built games before. But it's actually not a prerequisite. It really depends a lot, I would say, on the
Luke
the
is a
fit for the
first-time
team.
game builder.
Yeah, exactly. But he's also got a lot of really talented teams or builders with him who have made many games before. And the game that they're making is not, it's like Stardew Valley type of situation where you can have like play patterns that are known. It's not like you're trying to boil the ocean by creating first like a new play pattern and a new game economy and you're building on blockchain. Like these things, everything you do adds like a multiplier, a force multiplier. So you can think about it like it's exponentially harder the more stuff you try to figure out, right? And that's also when I kind of go back to the AAA teams, like they know that. So that's why they don't want to take the risk. So we actually don't want to partner with AAA teams. We think it's a waste of our time because they don't want to listen to us anyway. Because they look down on the players that we have. So fuck them.
We're gonna have to erase that part from the podcast.
Yeah, well, if you want to, if not, that's okay with me.
But in terms of the plan for Ronin moving forward, so obviously you're going to be a game-centric chain, and you plan to move to permissionless at some point. When is that going to happen? And then, do you anticipate at some point Ronin will go outside of gaming?
Yeah, so I think that it's a natural step for gaming to be the portal for people to enter the chain, right? So my vision is not only to create a Ronin network that's only for gamers. I think gaming is a natural start, but as we saw with Axie and SLP back in 2021, this is the start of a payment network because that's kind of where we begin. That's what people want to spend this money on. If they have money in their wallets, why would they just want to spend it in games? They would also spend it in shops in real life, right? So to me, that's the future here. I think we're going to bank the unbanked through games. I think it's the dream of any, let's say, Steam or any other platform to actually have been able to do that. But there's so many regulatory concerns in the traditional space that they necessarily can't, and they don't have the same infrastructure. So that's what makes blockchain, I think, unique. And the vision for Ronin is not only to be permissionless. Anyone should be able to build on it in the future, to deploy their games, but also all sorts of DeFi as well. It's just not a priority for now because we're very consumer focused. So we need to get the people, like it has to be like a movement from bottom up. The people who want to play these games, they will drive the change. They will be the people that are demanding, why can I not spend my money that I own in your shop? And the retailers around the world are going to say, well, you have money that I want. Of course, I'm going to accept that. That is the go-to market globally.
Maybe let's go into the end of this conversation by just understanding a little bit more about how you see that playing out globally, right? You guys have obviously focused a lot in Asia in the past couple of years. Do you think that Asia is going to be the center of this next phase of crypto and crypto gaming?
I think it's natural for Asia to be the place where this like revolution, I would say, begins. first of all, it's, the I would say Asian consumer, let's say like emerging nations, Southeast Asia in particular, they have a more heavy incentive to actually start using these products, because in games, in like blockchain games, they can actually make something that has a tangible impact on their life and in terms of money, right? And that is the beginning. So I think it's natural for Asia to be the starting point. And I think it's going to spread from there as the Western customers start to really understand more of the self-actualization points of crypto, which is sovereign ownership of data and also culture in terms of NFTs. So there's a lot to touch on there. It's just a more natural fit in terms of how I see Asia in terms of being more capitalistic, which is funny because the US is usually the more capitalistic side, but I feel like Asia is even more in some cases, right? Because you're not afraid of saying that I want to make money here. It's like, it's normal. But in the US, it's very almost woke to say that, money is a big thing, right? But here it's more normal. So, and especially let's say in these let's say Vietnam or, the Philippines or India, or like the dream is to grow and to make money and to make something of yourself. You're proud to say that. But in the West, it's probably like, even for me, I'm from Norway, it's like a socialist, democratic society. If you say that you want to be an entrepreneur or make money or succeed, you're sticking yourself out, you're a different kind of person. It's not as appreciated, I would say. So it's a cultural difference. So that's why I'm saying like it's going to come from the East, it's going to spread into the West. But yeah, through games, I think is natural. And then the gamers of the West are also going to see it, but only when the quality of the games, and this is where AAA gaming actually will come into play, when we have figured out the part of the business model, which is the economy, and then these games that come to market maybe in, I would say, maybe 5 years, those games are going to know what they're going to do. So they're going to implement those strategies, and that's going to be successful. Right now, I think it's way too early, and we're still in a very experimental phase. And that's why I think people or any game developer that's listening to this should be more aggressive in terms of experimentation, because they will learn. And sometimes I'm talking to like very technical people who are looking to solve the scaling challenges, and I'm like, yeah, that's really nice. But actually, to me, it has much more meaning to solve the economic problem, because the teams that are able to solve the economic problem in games, they will create jobs for hundreds of millions of people. That is incredibly powerful. Imagine being a team that's able to crack that puzzle. Suddenly everyone in the world is playing your game and be able to make a living. That's possible because of blockchain. And that, I think, is what we're going to be able to see in the next 5 to 10 years. So I think every smart person in the world should be working on trying to solve this problem, just from like a cost benefit perspective to the world almost. So I feel, yeah, maybe a little tangent there. But.
I think that's such a really good place where our time is drawn to a close. Aleksander, this was amazing. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you to all those who have tuned into the Web3 Harbour's Smart Contact Conversation series, and we'll see you next time.